Good morning. It's good to encounter you today. I am a woman without a name. Well, some people think they know what it is, but I'm not going to tell you that part of my story, not just yet. Let's get to my story. To begin, we did not have water that came through the pipes like you have today. Wow, what a luxury you have. Back in my day, we had to travel to wells to get water and often had to go up to 12 times a day, and it didn't matter how tired we were. Luckily, there were a lot of wells around, but I liked Jacob's well. You remember Jacob, don't you? He's Esau's brother. He's the one who is the father of the 12 tribes of Israel, and he is revered by all my people. Jacob's well had been giving water to us for centuries, and it was a place I liked to go because it was a place that brought me peace because, well, my life wasn't always easy. You see, I am a Samaritan, and I am a woman. When you combine those two things, let's just say my life didn't matter to most people. Anyway, it was about noon, and I was thirsty, and I realized I was out of water. So I gathered up my jars, and I decided to take the long road to Jacob's well. Perhaps I was thirsty for more than just water. Perhaps it was to feel like I mattered, like I counted to somebody, to anybody. Anyway, at that time of the day, I knew that if I got there, there wouldn't be many people there, and I wouldn't have to encounter the snide and rude remarks about my ethnicity, or I wouldn't have to be demeaned for being a woman. I could have time just to be me. When I got to the well, I noticed there was a man sitting there all by himself. I noticed that it was this Rabbi Jesus, you know, that new teacher that everybody is talking about. He was sitting on the well, and I could see that he was sweaty and dirty, sitting there under the hot noonday sun. But I didn't say anything to him. It wouldn't have been proper for me to do so. As I filled my jars, he paused and he asked me to give him a drink. A simple question, really. But unfortunately, my answer was not very nice. Okay, honestly, I argued with him. I mean, I am the one in the story that is always known as the shameless woman. But wasn't he shameless? A man who was not related to me or in my tribe, talking to me, a Samaritan, a woman, an outcast. Everyone knows the rules. Men and women were not allowed to speak or touch one another outside family or clan. Everyone also knows that Jews are not to speak to Samaritans, much less touch anything they touch, because they will become unclean. And yet this man, he spoke to me first. It was a small request. Will you give me a drink? But I could not do as he asked. Please try to understand me. I could have been beaten or killed for granting the simple request of yes and reaching out and accidentally touching him. Because he was a man I did not know. My walls were up and they were strong, and they were there because of years of abuse. And anyway, I was getting uncomfortable with this rabbi. He was a little pushy. I wanted to leave and to be alone, just to be with who I am. But somehow, somehow I couldn't do it. So instead of reaching out and giving him a drink, I asked him a question. A question that was a forbidden question for a woman to ask a man because it was a religious and political question. I asked him, how is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman from Samaria? It was with that question that I began to learn that this man, Jesus, he was not an ordinary man, nor was he an ordinary Jew. For when I asked that question, instead of striking me or yelling at me, he offered me something amazingly spiritual. Ignoring my catty statement, Jesus raised his head and he looked right into my eyes and he said, if you knew the gift of God and the one who is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you the gift of living water. Living water? What is that? I wondered. I was now so engaged by this man that I had to risk going into conversation with him. So trying to be polite, I said, sir, you have no bucket, and the well is very deep. Where do you get living water? He smiled, and he pointed to the well, and he said, everyone who drinks of this water, they will be thirsty again. But those who drink of the water that I give them, they will never be thirsty. The water that I give will become in them a spring of water that leads to eternal life. Strange as his words seemed, I believed him. And in that moment, more than anything else in the world, I wanted what he offered. I was so thirsty, so parched, so empty. Sir, give me this water, I begged. Give it to me so that I will never have to come to this well to draw water again. And he sat silent for a moment. And his next words, they shook me to my inner core. For he said, go. Go and get your husband and bring him back here. My heart was broken because I was going to have to tell him I didn't have a husband. Oh, I had come so close to getting that gift that he was going to give me, and now I felt like it was being taken away. I lowered my eyes and I whispered, sir, I have no husband. Then his eyes met mine once again, and he compassionately said, you're right. I know you have no husband. In fact, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you are living with now is not your husband. What you have told me is true. I was stunned into silence, and I felt like my legs were going to go out beneath me, and I had to sit on the edge of the well, trying to catch my breath. And then this Jesus, he started telling me things about my life that nobody but me ever knew. This was no ordinary man. This guy, he was a prophet. You know what the most amazing thing in all of this is? Never once did Jesus scold me. Never once did he condemn me. I have been widowed, divorced, childless, abandoned, and kept as a slave. We women were not granted any choices back then, and yet this man loved me and accepted me anyway. The love in his eyes and the concern in his voice made me bold, and I said, sir, I know that the Messiah is coming, and when he comes, he will proclaim all these things to us. And he reached out, and he touched my arm, and he said, I am he. I am the one speaking to you. In that touch, I felt Jesus give me his gift. He gave me himself, and I could feel his living water suddenly bursting forth inside of me. For the first time in my life, my soul was filled with a love and joy that I had never experienced before. For the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to be loved as a child of God. For the first time in my life, someone saw me, and they loved me for me. I have never felt so free and so alive with his living water pulsing through my veins. I wanted to sing and dance and hug him. And then the men who were traveling with him came over the hill. So I took one last long drink into his eyes and gathered my jars and left. I rushed back to Sychar, and I ran into the town center, and I exclaimed, come see the man who has told me everything about me. Can he be the Messiah? And that day a miracle happened. The people listened to me. They listened and they went and they told their friends about Jesus, and they followed him, and they became his followers. And all of them were touched forever by his living water. People listened so much that some traditions consider me a saint and call me by the name of Fotini. Legend has it that after my encounter with Jesus and after his death, I became a missionary that traveled to Africa teaching people about Jesus. Then one night I had a dream that I was to go back to Rome. And when I got back to Rome, I ran into Emperor Nero's daughter, Domina. And legend says that I taught her who Jesus was, and she, along with 100 of her slaves, were baptized as Christians. Oh, Nero did not like that. And he tried to have me killed, but Jesus saved me. It wasn't until many years later when I told Jesus my soul was tired that he took me home, and I died sleeping in his arms. You know, I often wonder if I'd gone to a different well, or if I hadn't had that encounter with Jesus, what would my life be like? For it was Jesus who saw through my pain, my false sense of security, my resentment of other people and life, and he saw through my pride. He embraced my vulnerability. He embraced every one of my fears, my anger, and he gave me the grace of giving me grace-filled living water to help me overcome all of the darkness that lived in my life, to find the freedom of who God created me to be. The best part is, this living water, it's available to you too. Anytime you are thirsty for it. Sometimes life just beats us down so far that we forget that no matter what the world says, we are deeply loved by God. Everyone thirsts for love, and we were created to love and to be loved. There is so much hatred, so much oppression, so much negativity in this world. And shouldn't we, as those who believe in Jesus, shouldn't we come together and to reach out to everyone and offer that life-giving water he so desperately wants to give? Think about it this way. Just as we thirst for Jesus, he thirsts for us. He thirsts for us to be at one with him and to bring others into him so that they can taste the living water and have their thirst quenched as well. With 5 husbands, I know all too well that the one who only thirsts for human love, they will always be thirsty. But the one who receives the living water of Jesus, they will be made whole. When was the last time you came to the well to drink his living water? When was the last time you invited someone else to come and drink the living water and have their soul quenched? Perhaps now is the time. The living water of Christ awaits.